So spooky but not spooky decks. What on earth am I going on about? The decks I've been working with just have been so perfect for this season, this autumnal season leading towards Samhain or Halloween. But they're not spooky. They're not my spooky decks that I have put out. They're not the autumn decks that are in the trolley. They're other decks I keep being called to. So I've got in front of me the Rose Alchemy Oracle and Thea's Hellenic Oracle. I thought to myself, why am I enjoying this so much instead of, say, pulling out, I don't know, a Vampire Tarot, say? This feels like a graveyard. I know that sounds weird. You've got the big showy flowers that you might see on a grave, and there's something about like falling into the rose as well. And you've also got actual characters from the past depicted in Thea's Oracle, and I suddenly thought, oh, it's that. It's characters that once were alive from Greek mythology, and the big flowers like a grave, plus the colour palette as well. And that got me thinking, that got me looking around at other decks that I'm working with, and I realised they all fit into this category of spooky, not spooky. So today I'm going to do an anatomy of a deck collection video. I have been through my collection and I've pulled out everything that I have felt tugged to work with, even though it's not one of the autumn decks I've already shown. It's not one of the scary decks that I've got out. This is the spooky, not spooky category, and I laid them all out and I tried to categorize why they fitted, and it was really fascinating. So I'm going to share my spooky, not spooky decks. I tried to stick to all mass market for this video. I don't know why, I just started and that was it. Apart from Thea's isn't, but Thea's is beautiful. So, oh, and this one. Okay, stuck to all mass market whilst showing you two indie decks. Should we just get the indie decks out of the way and then I'll stick to all mass market? Will I? Possibly, possibly not. Oh, let's just get into it. So let's start off with this combination of the Rose Alchemy Oracle, which is by Sandy Humber. So you've got these backs on them. This is Thea's Hellenic Oracle. It's that idea of a churchyard, I think. It's that idea of people who once were and are no longer. It's the stories and the memories of people who have passed. In this beautiful colour palette, put it next to a flower and it feels like you're stood at a grave. And then I thought, well, do I have other decks that make me feel like I'm in a graveyard or a church, say? Because anything I think that feels like a church or a graveyard, it's that idea of spooky but not spooky. Oh my gosh, are you seeing this? These two decks together have made me so happy. I'm on my second week of working with these two. Both weeks I've been really impacted by it. Do you know what, guys? I think I might be starting with what has turned into a bonded pair, which for me is a pair of decks that they grab onto each other and they say no where for working together. So anyway, I thought to myself, are there any other decks that might feel like this? And a while ago I picked this up. I paid less than £10 for this on eBay. Don't know if you can see this. This is the Byzantine Tarot by John Matthews and Scylla Conway. I just think this deck has got it's got a really amazing way of depicting sort of Byzantine art style, but in a way that really relates so well to tarot meaning. I just love it. And I think again, putting it with flowers, I mean, it doesn't need to be this deck, it could be any flower deck. I'm immediately transported into a very quiet and shadowy churchscape, or walking up to a temple through sacred land or a graveyard. So although you wouldn't pull these out saying these are Halloween decks, put them together and I think you're beginning to get that vibe. So this is my first category, guys. This is like church graveyard energy. I love it. I just think these are wonderful. So that's my first category, church, a graveyard, and the ghosts of the graveyard, because it's the people as well that give me that idea of people who've passed over, like a past history, inscriptions on tombs. It's that sort of feel. Our Tarot by Sarah Shipley, it had that feeling. I thought, oh yeah, that would work for that idea of people of the past. So it's almost like that idea of ghosts and the memory of people. So my ghost decks, so the memories of people who are passed. So I think ghosts that hold the history of people who are now dead. It also brings that kind of, it's spooky, but it's not spooky, but it could be spooky, but it's not. It's spooky, not spooky. And I thought, what could I put this deck with that feels like that idea of ghosts? And I thought the Findhorn Spirit Oracle cards, and this is a lot to do with the art style as well. So the backs of these cards look like that. Oh, they look quite nice together, don't they? You can see the art style looks very, it does look like spirits or ghosts. It looks like something you could see walking across a sort of field by a river at night, figures rising up out of the mists. And I think these two together, I like these two together actually. Oh wow, look at these two together. Oh, and two heads there and two heads there. It feels like whispers from ghosts. Neither deck is spooky. In fact, this deck, I love this deck with tarot of a moon garden, is wonderful. It does have that sort of ethereal sort of spirit, ghost in the mists quality, along with the history of these people that have since passed. It's like a ghostly combination. It's spooky, but it's not spooky. Also, this next one might be the most controversial one that I share. This is a deck that the deck's energy itself just feels a little bit troubled or off to me. That's the thought. Now, I do have a lovely relationship with my Thoth deck because of that energy. It's a deck that kind of has a very ridiculously loud voice for me, and I don't mean it's tarot voice, I mean it's kind of energy, the way it speaks to me. It is like a recalcitrant teenager, it really is, and that does give it an edge of bite to it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But it does. This is for me definitely a spooky, not spooky, because of its own inherent energy, which I tend to calm this energy down with the Fairy Tale Tarot. The two together makes this energy manageable, but on its own, whew, yeah, it's spooky, not spooky. Now I'm going to put it for the first time with a new oracle, which is the Power deck, the Cards of Wisdom. Now, this is not my find as a pairing. This is Marlena Teresa's finding. I saw this on her channel, and the minute I saw this pairing, I ordered the Power deck. It's not a very expensive deck at all, but it just looked so amazing with the Thoth. I mean, look at that. It's just incredible. These two together both have a spooky, not spooky kind of vibe going on. So it's inherent within the deck. It made me realise, this is also might be controversial for some, that I think collage decks are spooky, not spooky as well. They have a vibe as well. They've got an edge and a bite to them, which is why I think these two combined. Oh, I've literally got goosebumps as I'm saying this. I think these two combined definitely take on that spooky, not spooky. Wow, look at that. So the art style is going to play into this spooky, not spooky. I'm going to put collage decks in as a category as well. Collage decks, but so we've got two categories here. We've got the inherent energy of the deck, and collage can be spooky, not spooky. So this is the new chapter tarot by Catherine Briggs. I think even the picture on the front of the box, look at her face. Not spooky, but it kind of is. So again, it's the energy of this one for me. It's probably brought about by art style and just some of the imagery. I'd love to know if you guys agree. Do you agree with this? Yeah, it's just some of the faces look a bit off. I mean, look at the backs on these. On the back of these there is words that just feels slightly more desolate than it should. I mean, look at the fall. Again, you've got like the sort of Greek statues. That puts me kind of in some sort of weird cemetery again. And the Queen of Cups like looking down and shrouded. I mean, look at the Wheel of Fortune with the arms and the swords. The Five of Wands, look at that. And all the people just seem a little bit, there's an edge of spook to it. Just an edge of spook. That Two of Wands. And the Ten of Swords. You can see some of these are supposed to be horizontal. It's a very beautiful deck. Both of these are fabulous decks. Oh, I mean, look at this Eight of Swords. Hello. Even like the Magician, it's very kind of stoic and cold, and everybody looks like they've just recovered from something. You know, they've just walked through something, or they're in the middle of walking through something. There is a lot of angst in this one, I think. There really is. So these two belong with like the energy of the deck. Just feels spooky inherently. Probably the biggest one for me, even probably more so than the Thoth, is the Mary L Tarot. And it's not just because it's deep and it takes a lot of study. It is something else. It feels like it's got some dark places that I could fall into. Literally, I'm getting goosebumps opening it. So yeah, this is the second edition. I honestly would prefer the first edition, because for me, I think that's the reason why I always say this deck, I wish I had it with borders. I just would like to contain its energy just a little bit more with a border. It's just a bit too much. I've had this deck right from the get-go of my tarot practice, guys, and I've used it only for a handful of readings. It is so beautiful. Every time I look at it, I think, firstly, I think, oh, what is it about this deck and its energy? That's always the first thing. The second thing is I think, oh, it's so beautiful, I should use it more. I am going to try it paired with another deck that has similar energy. It's definitely spooky, not spooky. So they're not inherent. I mean, gosh, look at these cards. They're not inherently scary, but I wouldn't want to be walking through either deck on a dark night on my own. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah, so these definitely belong in that category of spooky, not spooky. Oh, the King of Discs always shows itself to me every time I get the deck out. It's never at the bottom of the deck. Never, never, ever. So Barbara Walker's writing style and for her decks in the guidebooks, it really pulls no punches. They're quite an experience to work with. So those are another two that are spooky, not spooky, in the same category of it's just inherent in the deck's energy. Fae decks. For me, the Fae energy is not sweet sort of Disney fairies. It's very much more Tarot of the She energy. It's very much, you know, you're about to get lost in the undergrowth forever and tricked into going somewhere you shouldn't. I think Dawn Michelle often, is it Dawn Michelle that often talks about this deck as being more like an alien deck for her, which is how she sees the energy of fairies. Have I just made that up? Dawn Michelle might never have said that. I think I might just have made that up, or perhaps not. But anyway, if Dawn Michelle does think that, that's fascinating, isn't it? But this is a Fae deck. For me, virtually all my Fae decks are spooky, not spooky, just because of the way I view the Fae. Because of how I view the Fae, I'm almost scared to get this deck out and to say it's spooky not spooky, because I feel like I might get a repercussion. But this is the Brian Froud Fairy Oracle. I do find this spooky not spooky. I just do. I find both of these decks spooky not spooky. So the Brian Froud Fairy Oracle and Tarot of the She have made it into this category. Look, I mean, you could definitely get these decks out and work with them during the Halloween season and not feel like you're missing out on a Fright Fest. Couldn't you? I mean, look at that. You really could. Oh my gosh, this might be a controversial deck as well to say spooky not spooky. This is where my Hidden Realm deck is. And every time I come to my fairy decks, it doesn't matter how I put them away, there's always a section that's the wrong way round. What is going on? Literally every time. Oh my gosh, that's, see, spooky not spooky. But look at these two together. I mean, if any combination of decks makes you feel that you're about to get whisked off into the undergrowth against your will and never allowed to return, it's these two. Look at them. Don't they look lovely together though? But you could definitely work, like I said, again with these two and not feel like you were missing out on spooky deck season. Like if you didn't own a single Halloween deck or vampire deck or monster deck, if you had no dark decks but you had these two, you could definitely work with them in Halloween and really embrace the essence of the spooky season, because they're spooky but not spooky. So I'm going to put the Tarot of the She back out, but I am going to put it this time with this deck, 50 Plants That Heal. Now this is a sort of botanical deck. It's not really got divinatory meanings as such, but the info on the back of the cards, you can infer meaning from them, because all the backs of the cards are like this. But it's this deconstructed flower, and I think it's two things with this deck. It's the very dark background, which I think is just chef's kiss, and it's the deconstructed element of the artwork. And I'm putting them together because I just knew they would look lovely with the black borders and the black background. But I think the two things combined, it looks like this plant spirit has been stolen away, possibly by the aliens of the Tarot of the She, and has been put on some laboratory experimentation table and dissected. And now I've said that, I've freaked myself out about these two decks. But it's deconstructed artwork and the colour scheme. So I think anything with dark backgrounds, dark edges, it immediately gives it that sort of darker part of the vibe. I mean, if Tarot of the She had bright yellow borders and this was set onto a white background, they would have totally different feels. So we've got colour scheme coming into play here and deconstructed artwork. That idea of something being dissected for our pleasure. Oh, it's quite gruesome when you think of it. If you're a plant spirit, this would be your key Halloween deck. Let's face it. Yeah, we're going into art style here and the features of art style. So colour schemes and deconstructed artwork. I suppose the idea of the deconstructed artwork, that might be why for me collage feels a little bit spooky not spooky. That's it. Oh my gosh, realization in real time. That's what it is. It's that chopped up and reformed Frankenstein feel of the art style. Another deck which this kind of falls into the two categories. It feels like that churchyard, walking through a graveyard into some sort of church feel, but it's also applies to this category of the art style. Again, you've got the dark borders on this, and you've got sort of this beautiful gilding on it as well. So it's a bit of both. Oh, by the way, did I say what this is? This is the Botticelli Tarot. It's absolutely stunning, but again, it's got that sort of feel of a churchyard, and the art style features could mean that it was spooky, not spooky, and I really wanted to put these two together. I've always loved these two decks together. I love the way the shape of the gilding often mirrors the shape of these dissected and split up and segmented plants and leaves. I just think it's lovely. But again, if you'd got no sort of horror deck in your collection, or you didn't like dark decks but you'd got lovely art decks and you liked plant decks, pull these out and put them together for a spooky not spooky vibe. But there was no way you could work with this again and then feel like you'd missed out on spooky season because of your deck collection. I just think they work brilliantly. Spooky not spooky. I think the Uncommon Tarot is not shown enough on YouTube, whatever enough is, but I've heard a lot of people say they don't like this. It's mass market, it's collage, it's gorgeous. It does have a kind of spooky vibe to it. So this can go into like the art style category. It's collage, so you've got that deconstructed, chopped up imagery that can have that vibe to it. But also with this one, can you see it's kind of got a clouded sort of filter over it? It's almost claustrophobic because of it. Another deck that does it is the, oh my gosh, the Divine Muses. The Divine Muses is, I've taken it out of its little pouch and put it in a great big airy bag just to try and get rid of that claustrophobic vibe to it, and that's because it's got sort of a cloudy filter over it. It's in this deck a little bit as well, and I think that can give it a spooky vibe. So again, this is, we're talking art style here, we're talking the filter on the artwork, we're talking the cut up nature of collage. I thought I could try this deck paired with another deck that comes into this category. These are the Cosmic Reading Cards by Anastasia. I mean, just the box itself, immediately you can see that kind of photo manipulated art style. Oh my gosh, I'm getting distracted because as I'm saying that, I've just thought of another deck that does this with photo manipulation. Oh my gosh, that's going to be another controversial one. Never mind, I'll go get it in a minute. But look at these two. They've also got like a lot of blue going on, so they're a nice pairing immediately. But this, actually, is it photo manipulated? Some of them are. It's just the art style and the colour palette, I think. A spooky, not spooky. So if anybody has no dark decks, no Halloweeny type decks, you've never felt compelled to buy them, but you do have collage decks and you do have decks like this that are very insular in their colour palette, that can, I think, introduce that sort of claustrophobic feel. Oh, I like these two together. I think these two together look amazing. Are you ready for it? Ciro Machete decks. Now, I've never bought a Ciro Machete deck. I've always said it's not really my style of art. I got sent this one by the lovely Nancy over at Paper Moon Tarot ages ago. I got it out just to give it a bit of a trial, just see what I thought, and oh boy, it blew my socks off. It completely blew my socks off to the point that I have looked at other Ciro Machete decks now thinking, oh my gosh, should I get them? But not only have you got a jester's mask on the back, and oh boy, masks I feel are so scary. But why is Ciro Machete decks a bit spooky for me, a bit on the spooky edge of things? it's the hyper realism of them, this sort of photo manipulation. I suppose again you've got that idea of different images being joined together to make like a whole image, but it's also hyper real. And there's something about, oh look, there's something about the hands in this hyper real deck that just, oh, I don't know, it just does something. Wow, look at all of these circles, that's cool. I just think that hyper realistic art, so again we're in the realm of art style, makes a deck a bit more spooky. So all of my photo manipulation collage decks could work in spooky not spooky too for me. Yeah, loads and loads of spooky vibes there, like these heads floating in the sky. Something about it, and like these teddy bears just appearing in the garden. Yeah, for me there is something definitely spooky not spooky involved in this. And then we leave art style to subject matter of the deck. So sometimes it's the very subject matter of the deck itself that can induce a spooky not spooky vibe. And be warned if you don't like clowns, because we are in our clown era, guys. So this is Jolie's Le Grande Circus and Sideshow Tarot, and I love this deck. I think it's amazing. It's just circus themed, but it shouldn't be spooky. But look at the backs. So look away right now if you do not like clowns. And I think this deck contains probably the spookiest card I have ever seen in any deck anywhere. I mean, you've got a nod to the fact that animals in circuses are sad. All the elephants look absolutely tragically sad. All the people look exhausted and overworked. I mean, look, you've got electric chairs. Right, then this is the scariest tarot card ever. Please look away if you don't like clowns. But this is the Six of Cups. I mean, it's so scary. It literally is funny. I love it. I mean, that little girl just needs to run like hell. But everything about it, look how sad the animals are. Look at the animal eyes. It is supposed to be depicting like the work of a circus, but it's really spooky. And I think I'm not alone in saying that any kind of circus themed deck, now this is Alana Fairchild's Divine Circus Oracle, which is the first edition, which has got glossy cardstock and the borders on it, which I by far prefer to the unbordered version that's out now. So beware, if you like this deck, if you order it now, you will probably get matte cardstock and no borders on this deck, so beware that you know what you're ordering. But I don't think I am alone in thinking that just this big tent imagery and anything to do with circuses is a little bit spooky. It's just, it feels like again that you wouldn't want to stray too far from the lamplight at night if you were walking through the deck. So inherently it's just a trip to the circus, guys, but also it's like watch your back time. Definitely watch your back time. And if a clown with a white face creeps out and offers you a cup full of something, then do run the other way very fast. So subject matter. I've got one more to put in with the circus theme. We're not out of the clown woods yet, people. We're not out of the clown woods yet. I've got the Phantom Wives Tarot, which of course is a deck by Erin Morgenstern based on In the Night Circus, which is one of my all-time favourite books. A little bit less circusy, but let's just throw it in while we're throwing a circus theme out there. because it still has a spooky vibe. This also comes into that category of art style. It's a limited colour palette. See, limited colour palettes, as well as collage, as well as deconstructed artwork. It does it. There's something about the limited colour palette. We saw it in this one, in the cosmic reading cards, which was all blue. It can be a bit suffocating. There's no release from it. There's no change of colour to let you catch a breath. So we've got art style colour palette, and we've got the dark borders, and here we're presented with the idea of the circus. I mean, that is a little bit freaky if you ask me. So circus themes. Are we out of the circus woods yet? Yep. If you've got your eyes shut for clowns, bear with me a sec. Okay, you're now safe. While we're on the idea of themes, we're out of the circus now. How about artwork where there is an animal head on a human body, or vice versa? It's got a name, Anthropomorphic something. I can never say the word. I literally physically can't say it. This box, look at this box, guys, it's just all fallen apart. So 0 out of 10 for the box. It's so full of dog hair. Why is it full of dog hair? Oh, little snapshots on my life. But I love animal heads and human bodies mixed up. I love it. In fact, I love it so much it seems a little bit odd to me how much I love it, but I can't help myself. I just love them. So I've also got the Curious Creatures, and I've got Rebel Heart Tarot. This one here is the Bohemian Animal Tarot, which is a lot more Rider-Waite Smith base. Look at the colours in this box and on this deck. Again, this is collage, so it's deconstructed imagery, which immediately puts you into spooky vibe. Perhaps spooky but not spooky, but a lot of this is animal heads on human bodies as well. Look, so you could do a Frankenstein theme for Halloween deck use or spooky season deck use, and just pull all your decks that have got this and imagine that you're entering some evil scientist's lair and watching the experiments happen. I don't know what this says about my mind, but there you go. Look, and it's the theme. It's theme. I find these joyous, but it is joyous with just an edge of ooh every time, even though I love them. I mean, I know some people hate them so much they just can't work with them. Or like, look, anything replace. Look, we've got a disco ball. Oh, that's Taylor Swift, the mirror ball on the head there instead. So this deck does this. There is a tomato. Look, there's a tomato head woman in the greenhouse as well. So again, it's that deconstructed, chopped up element, isn't it? So subject matter, anthropomorphic. See, I literally can't say it. Anthropomorphic. I cannot say that word. I know what the word is, I just can't say it. You know what I mean. Okay, another controversial one. I'm going to leave the Bohemian Animal Tarot out, which is very Rider-Waite based, very, and I'm going to throw into the middle of it the Rider-Waite deck, specifically this one, the original Rider-Waite, because it's a lot more blurry. The printing is blurry, so that gives it that kind of claustrophobic vibe. I find this a lot more spooky than, say, a really clearly printed sort of 1970s version of the deck, or like a yellow box version, because it's got that If it was a throat, it would need to cough. Do you know what I mean? It's got that vibe to it. But why have I put the Rider-Waite in? Well, the Thotter's already gone in. The Rider-Waite is going to go in, and spoiler, I'm about to put Marseille in as well. It's these traditional decks, and when I pulled them all out, I thought, why Candy? Why are they spooky, not spooky to you? And I had to sit and think about it for a while. It's because of the amount of history and time past that's gone into them. They've had a very long time to have spooky things latch onto them and into them. Does that sound incredibly controversial? I think it might do, but it's the longevity and the long history that's held within them. It just feels like when you pick up this sort of deck, it's the difference between walking into a new built house or walking into a medieval house. There is a difference in the vibe, and that vibe is about the history that's walked through the halls and the doors and the corridors and the cards. So there we go. That is why the Rider-Waite is in there as well. With that idea of history, I thought about pairing it with the Shaman's Oracle, which is absolutely incredible. This looks at shapes and symbols and like cave drawings. It's got that feeling of entering an ancient cave. So we've got a medieval house here and an ancient cave in this one, and that idea of like memories and what is it holding, the memory of the things that it holds. So a history memory holder, you know, the bones of the people who once held these cards in their hands. It's got all of that inherent in them, like the stories of life gone by held in these cave paintings and symbols, like really early language. I suppose that's what it is. It's the very early language of mankind, the very early language of tarot. There's history there. So I suppose this could be a category of history holders. I suppose decks as well that contain sort of cave painting, old symbols or bones, that sort of thing. There's a history there, like dug up bones and skeletons. That would be spooky, not spooky. It would just be like bones or cave paintings, but it's the history that it holds. There is that spooky edge to it because of that. Let's not leave Marseille out of the equation with the accusation of being spooky. Now, this is the Marseille deck that came with the magazine Total Tarot, which I was sent by one of you gorgeous lot. I love this version because it's just so clear. Look at how clear it is. So it's the inherent history there, isn't it, that I think gives it an edge. Like I say, it's not your new built house, it's your medieval haunted hall, the house on the hill, the house in the woods that's been there 100 years. It's that. So let's try pairing it with this beauty. This is the Tarot del Fuego. I love this one. This isn't out on the autumn decks, it's not out on the spooky decks because its colour palette is just so bright. But when I pulled it out, I thought, well, why? So there is a lot of eyeballs in this deck. Look, and again, it's that deconstructed nature of like a human face. So you've got art style in this. Plus, just like monotone decks can be a bit suffocating and not give you a place to come up for air, I think these hyper busy decks do the same thing. And I didn't realise this, guys, until I sat down and pulled all the decks out and then had to analyse the whys behind it, which is why I love this series, the Anatomy of a Deck Collection. I am literally pulling my tarot decks out and asking why. So this came apparent. There's another few decks I'm going to share in a minute as well, where it's the colour palette being over busy, but also in this one you've got that idea of that deconstruction as well. But can we just take a moment to appreciate these two decks together? What? Isn't this fantastic? Look at this. Oh my gosh, I love these two together. So Marseille is my least known system still. I had such high hopes for Marseille's study this year, and unfortunately it just hasn't happened. That's fine. Real life comes into play. So although this is full of fangs and monsters and extra eyes, I think it's more the colour palette that made me pull this out, the busyness of it. It's just very busy art style. And they're great, two spooky decks together. Again, I wouldn't think that you would have missed out on spooky season if these were the only two decks that you'd got to work with. And look at this card with this card. Wow, I mean, look at that. You've got a cave full of eyeballs, and I think that might be why people find eyeballs a bit spooky in a deck, because it's that deconstructed element. There shouldn't be lots of eyeballs there. What's going on? So that is my Marseille Tarot with my Tarot del Fuego. The busyness of art style can bring in a spook factor, whether that be like the layout of the art style, whether that be the colours or the patterns of the art style. If it's busy, it can really bring in a spook factor for me. It's because there's nowhere to breathe. It feels like it's choking you. Now, the Journey to Enlightenment Tarot is the absolute pinnacle of what I'm talking about with this. This deck, I can hardly use this deck because of how much it feels like this, how much it gives you no room whatsoever to breathe. It's busy in pattern, it's busy in colour, it's busy in art style. Just like every single space, there's something going on. I mean, look at this. It just is absolutely the epitome of what I'm talking about. And because of that, it does take on this sort of claustrophobic, choking, suffocating vibe to it. I'm going to try pairing it with the Oracle of the Witch. Again, this one feels similar to me as well. It is a two-tone colour palette. I think the red and the black, you're automatically in spooky colours, that colour combo. So colour plays such a massive part in this too. But these are quite busy as well, like these edges. I mean, look at this. Not quite so much as this one, although nothing does it quite as much as this one, but it's still very, very busy. There's a lot going on. Plus here it's the colour palette that's more limited. Here it's the colour palette that's just every colour thrown at it. But you can see it's art style surface features that are bringing in that spook factor. And I'm here for it. There's none of this on any of these decks is a criticism. I am totally here for it. So don't think I'm dragging out decks and criticising them. I'm not. I'm dragging out decks and delighting in it and loving, understanding like the anatomy of what makes these decks feel like this for me. The one thing about this series where I give myself a question and ask why and then go to my collection to try and solve it is that it clarifies for me. So the next time, say I'm in the middle of summer but I want something that feels spooky, I'll know that I can go to limited colour palette decks or busy decks or my Fae decks or decks that feel like a graveyard. I've sussed it out, which I think is what is so, oh, that's a powerful card, which is so interesting to have been able to have done. So let's leave that oracle out. The last deck that I want to share with you also falls into this category of it's just so darn busy. Again, its layout, its art style, and its colour palette as well. So this is the Bonfire Tarot, which has just been released in a matte version, which I'm sorely tempted to get, but I haven't worked with this version enough to justify it for me. Its colour palette, it's just so darn busy, and the layout of the cards is so busy. So this time you've got like this sort of tattoo style art. Again, very few places to come up for air. Look. And it's not a criticism, because Abby Angus West is one of my favourite tarot artists. She did the Frida Kahlo Tarot Avatara, similar styles all the way through. I love her decks, love them. But if you wanted a deck that feels spooky, you've got it right here. I quite like it with this oracle because you can see what I mean. The patches of red give you a place to rest and to take a breath. You can see it there because I think in contrast, that stillness in the red empty space is your place to pause. I've covered loads of categories there. I'm going to try and somehow go back through this video and work out some of the categories that I spoke about. So you've got deconstructed art, collage art, you've got graveyard art, you've got art that feels like old churches, you've got art that holds history, all sorts of categories, fey decks, single colour palette decks, busy decks. I'm going to try and put those categories in the description box. If you enjoyed this, guys, leave me a thumbs up and leave a comment. That really helps the channel. Subscribe if you haven't, because that would be so cool if you would subscribe. And as always, if you want to join in and jump on this tag and show me your spooky, not spooky decks, that would be cool. There are literally no rules. I will put the categories that I discovered doing this in the description box. If you just want to stick to those categories, that's fine. If you want to pull out all of your own decks that feel spooky but aren't spooky and sit and work it out for yourself, so you're analysing your own collection and you find a load of different categories, and put those down as well. That'd be super cool to find out different categories as well. So any rules go. Join in if you want to. I'd love that. And thanks so much for watching, guys. Enjoy spooky season, and I'll see you next time. Bye.